In the early 20th century, psychiatry was a field filled with desperation. Mental illness filled overcrowded asylums, and treatments were often more terrifying than the diseases themselves. Electroshock therapy, insulin-induced comas, even hydrotherapy. None were particularly effective. Families were begging for answers, and doctors were searching for anything that looked like progress. Then, in 1935, Portuguese neurologist António Egas Moniz introduced something he believed was revolutionary: the lobotomy. His theory was that by severing the neural connections in the brain's frontal lobes, he could relieve patients of their most troubling symptoms. At first, it seemed promising. Moniz reported dramatic results, and in 1949, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work, a decision still debated today. But in the United States, lobotomy's rise came at the hands of one man, Dr. Walter Freeman. Charismatic and showy, Freeman wasn't even a trained surgeon, but he believed lobotomies could be the answer to nearly all psychiatric suffering. Partnering at first with neurosurgeon James Watts, Freeman began performing procedures in hospitals across the country. Soon, he developed his own infamous shortcut, the ice pick lobotomy. Using an actual ice pick-like instrument, Freeman would slide it through the corner of the eye socket, hammer it into the thin bone, and sweep it back and forth to sever the connections in the frontal lobe. No operating room was needed. No anesthesia beyond shock therapy. The whole procedure could be done in less than 10 minutes. Freeman even traveled in his lobotomobile, performing thousands of these surgeries across the U.S. Sometimes he did dozens in a single day, often in front of medical students, journalists, and even live audiences. By the 1940s and 50s, lobotomies were performed on patients with depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, alcoholism, even on children, or simply difficult family members. In total, more than 40,000 lobotomies were done in the United States alone. At first, many families believed the surgery worked. Patients did become calmer, less violent, less suicidal. Some even seemed cured. But the dark reality soon became undeniable. Many were left with flattened personalities, unable to feel deep emotions, unable to plan or live independently. Some became permanently childlike, others vegetative, and thousands died from the procedure itself. One of the most famous tragedies was that of Rosemary Kennedy, the sister of future President John F. Kennedy. In 1941, at just 23 years old, she was subjected to a lobotomy at the urging of her father. The surgery left her permanently disabled, unable to walk or speak coherently, and she spent the rest of her life in an institution. By the late 1950s, a new development began to turn the tide: psychiatric drugs like Thorazine. These medications provided a far less invasive way to manage symptoms. As success stories spread, lobotomies began to look less like a miracle and more like a barbaric shortcut that had robbed countless people of their lives and identities. Criticism mounted. Journalists exposed horror stories. Families spoke out. And the medical establishment began to distance itself from Freeman and his methods. In 1967, after a patient died on his operating table, Walter Freeman was finally banned from performing surgery. By then, his career tally was staggering: nearly 3,500 lobotomies. By the 1970s, lobotomy had fallen completely out of favor, condemned as one of the darkest mistakes in medical history. It remains a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily desperation, ambition, and blind trust in progress can transform healing into horror. Once hailed as salvation, lobotomies are now remembered as a medical horror story. Proof that in the wrong hands, the cure can be far worse than the disease.